Good morning. It's Thursday, August 7th, 2014. This is Tech Talk Today, episode 40. My name is Chris, and this is a Thursday edition of Tech Talk Today. So, to help us for our last episode of the week, I've assembled an awesome Mumble team. Time-appropriate greetings, Mumble citizens.
Time-appropriate greeting.
Hello. Hi, Lionhead. We have a good group in there, and we will be back with their commentary and thoughts as we continue on. Let's start with our first story today, and this is one for Docker. Now, if you guys are not familiar with the Docker project, you should go watch some of our shows on this. We've had some interviews with the Docker folks. It's some really great container software that's coming out for Linux, and the market seems to also agree. Docker Containment Management Startup, which this is what they focus on now, has just gotten another $40 million. It could actually be up to $75 million, according to two sources familiar with the situation now. The deal is still in the works. The company is estimated to be valued at $400 million. This past January, Docker did land a $15 million Series B investment, bringing the company's total amount of funding to $26 million. So if they added $40 million, that would be pretty significant. And some rumors are even saying it's a $75 million funding. Look at this. This is huge. This is a technology based on Linux that is delivering services for Linux servers. This isn't a distribution itself. This isn't a server release of some software package. This is just sort of like an enabling technology. But yet they're still raising a ton of money. It shows you how much the market wants a solution like this. And man, did the Docker guys come in at just the right time, and they got a lot on their plate. They still have a lot to do, but they are off to a great start. So congratulations to the Docker folks who are potentially raising another $40 million. Not a lot there, Mumble Room, but is there anything you guys want to chime in on that story with? Any thoughts about Docker? Or how much money? Are you surprised? Anybody surprised at the amount of money the Docker project is raising? No.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised. I didn't know it was that big, really.
Yeah, I mean they're saying. I mean, so they already have roughly $400 million that they've raised, and they're potentially going to get another up to $75 million. That's amazing. This is an open source success project story for. I don't know if I'm just not familiar with another open source project that has seen this level of success this fast. They've only been around. I mean, they just like 3 weeks ago released 1.0 of their software. Okay, so that's how fast this is moving for them. That's what I find to be really fascinating about the story. But it does seem to be pretty valuable software. We talked a lot about Justin.tv yesterday and how they're focusing on Twitch. Well, now the other shoe has dropped. Twitch is implementing a YouTube-like system for blocking copyrighted audio. In an announcement, Twitch says it's partnering with software company Audible Magic, which works with the music industry to scan past and future videos on demand for music owned or controlled by its clients. If the scan identifies a recorded video that infringes upon the copyright claim, the video will be muted for 30-minute blocks. So if you have 30 seconds of audio that is copywritten, they will mute your video for 30 minutes. And they put up a little error message at the bottom. The video still plays, but there's a discrete error at the bottom that says there is a content claim for this audio, and so the audio has been blocked. Now, the practice does only apply to pre-recorded videos, not live videos that you're streaming on Twitch, which is, I guess, okay. I actually think, let me ask you guys in the Mumble Room this. Do you think this is a sign that maybe YouTube and Twitch are not merging? Because if they were going to merge, wouldn't they just hold tight and use the Content ID system built into the back end of YouTube?
I think that's a good point. That does seem indicative that they'd stay separate.
Yeah, I mean, my first thought was, oh yeah, they're getting in line with the way Google does business. But then I realized, well, wait a minute. No, Google has a track record. When they acquire a technology company, sometimes they shut it down because they re-implement a lot of that on their own infrastructure. That's what Google has, is an amazing infrastructure. So it would seem really odd that a company they're on the precipice of buying would go off and implement their own technology like this. Don't know. Maybe. We'll see. All right. So go figure, though. Go figure doing the Content ID. I can tell you as somebody who posts videos to YouTube, the systems are horrible. They do not work very well. And just like the YouTube one, you are assumed guilty. There is an appeal process that you have to go through a review for. So it's not that awesome. Rikai points out that it could be a test bed for new technology. That's possible. That would be inconsistent with previous Google acquisitions, but it seems possible. And I think that the functionality of Twitch would be a good addition to YouTube. So we'll see. Okay, next story. We got a couple follow-up stories. Let's bust through a few Microsoft stories really quick. China has done another rounds of raids on Microsoft offices. This is another round. A Chinese antitrust regulator conducted new raids on Microsoft's offices and a partner of theirs, Acatures. Acature is an agency which handles Microsoft's financial dealings in China, and they raided an office in Beijing and 4 other offices, it looks like, or 3 other offices in total. The State Administration for Industry and Commerce said that Microsoft has been suspected of violating China's anti-monopoly law since June of last year in relation to problems with compatibility, bundling, and document authentication for its Windows operating system and Microsoft Office software. That's according to the Chinese officials in a statement they made late last week. China's intensifying its efforts to bring companies into compliance with anti-monopoly law that it enacted in 2008, having in recent years taken aim at industries as varied as milk, powdered suppliers, and jewelry makers, and car manufacturers. It's not just Microsoft and Apple. Apple, by the way, the iPad was put on a do not buy list, or I'm sorry, to be more accurate, it was removed from an okay to buy list in January from the government. And this is a list that says you buy anything on this list, you can buy it with government funds. If you buy off this list, no funding for you. And they removed iPad devices off there. Now they've removed Windows 8 off this list. And now they're doing these raids on Microsoft offices. And I haven't seen a lot of reporting about this, but I believe they've also raided Audi. Yeah, the car manufacturer, Audi's offices. It is a heating up. Are we in a new Cold War fate? What's going on?
Yeah, this isn't good, like for Microsoft anyway. Because Microsoft, when they only made software, it didn't really matter so much because a lot of the Chinese pirate it. But when you make hardware, if you have a bad relationship with China, that's not good for you. And I think China's striking back, especially at Microsoft, probably because they were at the top of the NSA's buddy list, and that China just doesn't have a good relationship with the U.S. government, so.
Yeah, and what doesn't it also, if you can just sort of slow Microsoft down or slow Apple down, it kind of gives the competitive edge to a homegrown Chinese company that has the home turf advantage already. So even if you don't totally end Microsoft's business, if you can disrupt it enough so that way your home field players have that much more of an advantage, then you're essentially sort of cultivating a domestic company, which they may have more influence over, et cetera, et cetera. So I think there's that at play too when it comes to this. It's not just so much about the NSA. I think it's also like they'd rather see a domestic technology company pull ahead. And I think it's also, it is a little bit of pushback against the U.S. government, too. I think there's some politics here because we've been very publicly, we've publicly shamed Huawei, the telco gear manufacturer, for supposedly bugging their firmware. And then we got caught doing the same thing. We have banned purchase of certain Chinese equipment in the U.S. government. We've removed their stuff from our list. And so this would seem to be, in some sense, their response to the actions that the U.S. has taken late last year, potentially. So there's that to consider as well. While we're on the Microsoft tread, have you guys heard about Threshold? The new such a cool code name. You know, Microsoft always has great code names and then lousy actual product names. Well, Threshold is the name of the next version of Windows. Why am I mentioning that? Well, it came out this week, first reported over at neowin.net by Brad Simmons, that Microsoft is adding virtual desktops to the next release of Windows expected in spring of 2015. Virtual desktops, huh? And also other UI changes coming to Threshold. They're getting rid of the Charms bar. Goodbye, Charms bar. If you've got an existing modern app that uses the Charms bar, I'm sorry, by the way, but if you do, they're just going to move those into a new menu that'll be built into the application. Virtual desktops coming to Windows. And in the article, in fact, let me see here. Did they link to NeoWin? Yeah, let's go here. I think in the article they actually show the Ubuntu Unity virtual desktop as an example of this is what the new version of Windows virtual desktops will look like. Here's the Unity desktop. Like, really, guys? Really? But it is about time, and it makes me think that Microsoft's getting serious about power user features in the next version of Windows. So,
power user features from like forever ago.
Yeah. But I mean, it is a pretty dramatic change to go from you don't need a desktop, here's the new modern UI, to how would you like to have 4 desktops?
Yeah, that's true.
That's a huge change. So that's very strange.
Sounds like lack of focus.
Yeah, that does seem to be their problem, doesn't it? All right, one last Microsoft story. And this one goes back to the one that has gotten some of the most response out of any story we covered on Tech Talk today. The whole Google scanning Gmail and finding child porn and then proactively alerting law enforcement. Turns out Microsoft does the same thing. A lot of companies do the same thing. And Google is very likely using some Microsoft technology to accomplish it. So perhaps because of the attention the Google story got, Microsoft hates to be left out of the headlines. There's a piece up on the BBC about Microsoft leading to a child porn arrest in Pennsylvania. An arrest in Pennsylvania being covered by the BBC. A tip-off from Microsoft has led to an arrest of a man in Pennsylvania who is charged with receiving and sharing child abuse images. It flagged the matter after discovering the image involving a young girl had been allegedly saved to the man's OneDrive cloud storage, not his email, but they found they're scanning OneDrive. Microsoft terms and conditions for its U.S. users explicitly states that it has the right to deploy automated technologies to detect child pornography or abusive behavior that might harm the system, customers, or others. Following the most recent case in Pennsylvania, Mark Lamb, the company's digital crimes unit at Microsoft, released the following statement. He said, child pornography violates the law as well as our terms of service, which makes it clear that we use automated technologies to detect abusive behavior that may harm our customers or others, he wrote. He goes on to say, in 2009, we developed Photo DNA, a technology to disrupt the spread of exploitive images of children, which we report to the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children as required by law. Photo DNA creates a unique signature for each image similar to a fingerprint to help pictures be matched. This is done by converting the picture into black and white, resizing it and breaking it into a grid. Each grid cell is then analyzed to create a histogram describing how the colors change in intensity within it, and the information obtained becomes its quote-unquote DNA. Google also uses Photo DNA alongside its own house technologies to detect child abuse images. In addition, the software is used by Facebook, Twitter, and others. Microsoft really is trying to sell itself as we are your privacy alternative to Google. You want to use the cloud, but you want privacy? Come over to Microsoft. So here's Microsoft very proactively reaching out to the BBC so that way they get a certain amount of exposure and going to some level of detail describing what they do to detect child pornography and sort of saying, hey, we've put this in our terms of service and coming right out with it. You guys have had a few days to marinate on this, Lionhead. What do you think? Are you comfortable with them scanning OneDrive and the email? I know we talked about it on, I think it was Monday's show. Now that it's marinated a little bit, how do you feel now?
Well, I've been thinking about it. It's not comfortable that they scan that sort of stuff, but when you think of it, not even doctors' patient privileges are protected in terms of child abuse. So is there, in that kind of context, reasonable that your email should be protected as well?
Yeah, I don't know, because it seems like there you're going into, when you go in to have somebody do a service for you, you're sort of engaging in a process where you acknowledge that they are going to find out certain things about you. But what this is more of like passive law enforcement, where I think it's sort of a no-brainer when it comes to child porn. What I was thinking about later on is it seems possible that this could also turn into, we've detected copywritten material in your inbox, or a link to copy-protected material, or we believe the thing in your inbox violates the intellectual property of one of our partners. And I mean, we just had a story about this happening on Twitch. It now happens on SoundCloud. It now happens on GitHub. It obviously happens on YouTube. You've got takedown search requests that happen in the millions for Google search. It doesn't seem that far of a reach, right, Fate?
Okay, so when you said Google, like you mentioned the story before, and it sounded like Google was quote unquote scanning in an abstract sense my digital files, which I already assumed they did. But what you just described in that photo DNA scares the crap out of me. Like that is an amazing technology, one that more companies, especially ones with a vested interest in either copyright or prosecution or both, would love to have. And the day that they have access to all of that information is a bad day for the consumer. Because
Yeah.
when you pair the infringement laws, or
Right.
I don't know, like social dissidence, or really any non-socially acceptable medium, with the ability to scan everything there is with something that apparently can detect in whatever form. It's not just a hash, it's literally whatever form something comes in, and detect it. That's not good. That scares me.
Right. And the copy protected thing, especially when you start talking about OneDrive and Dropbox. Oh, in fact, we've seen Dropbox remove links. Now, if somebody had a copyrighted file and it was in a public folder, Dropbox is already removing that. That's step one. I don't know. As a parent, I always want to make sure that my children are safe. As somebody who thinks that sometimes the existing IP laws around content that you can find on the web are a little draconian and they go too far and they are not responding to customer demands, and so sometimes I've been known to back up a file off the internet or two. That scares me. That's where it starts. That's where it starts to bug me. We'll see if it goes there. I mean, I'm going to set up my own mail server one of these days anyways, but you can see how it's expanding beyond just email. Now it's OneDrive, it's Dropbox, it's GitHub, it's SoundCloud. That's starting to get a little claustrophobic in here.
Yeah, it's the fact that I have the infrastructure to do much more than is already done, because you have to put a big amount of trust into these companies that they don't abuse the power they have.
Yeah, it's a lot of trust.
Which is why it's bad to give them the power in the first place.
That's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And as much as we hate, child pornography existing, putting the power into stopping it is giving them a lot more power than they should have in the first place.
Right. And how many times have we
that's
handed
sort of the
over
problem.
power to protect the children? Or
So I think it really should be, parents should protect their children, and that's it. And you really should. That's your responsibility as a parent.
Well, like I'm in support of the warrant, entire system. If you have a warrant, you get the information. You have to have a judicial process where it has to be reviewed in front of a neutral party that then approves the request, rather than, hey, let's just give all the information to the law enforcement and the government because they've never abused power before, right?
Yeah, right? Exactly.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to watch if this right now, where it's at is probably an area, a zone we could all pretty much live in if it never really proceeded any farther than this. If it does proceed farther than this, we'll talk about it here on the show. And we can always discuss alternatives if it starts to become a problem. But for right now, I want to change the tone. And we were celebrating the barbecue challenge this week. We're still, this is like, it's not over. This is just a sort of a first barbecue thing, something we could do right away that I wanted to give you guys out there, a way to enjoy some barbecue chicken as lazy as possible. The easiest barbecue chicken you have ever had. Well, okay, I won't say that, because there is a certain level of quality that we must demand. We must demand a certain level of quality. But think of this as like crock pot for your barbecue. So I want to start with a barbecue chicken recipe that I have all of it laid out in the show notes, the steps, all of it. So here's what we need to do. So let's start. Start with, go grab yourself a whole chicken, okay? And I like to get it from a local butcher, but you can get it from a grocery store, a full bird. I have a picture of it up on the stream right now. In fact, I've got a link to the whole gallery. You guys can check out pictures if you're curious to see how it went. But the night before you want to eat this bird, so think about it like a day you're going to be busy. Maybe you work at home and you've got a project you're going to be on, or it's a Saturday and you're going to go out and take care of some stuff, and you need to plan ahead by one day. That's all I ask of you. The night before, combine vegetable stock, salt, water, and ice in something large enough to hold the bird and all of that stuff with a little extra room. I use a cooler, and it works really well for me. I take the bird, I drop it into a cooler, I add a ton of ice, and then I put that in a cool spot in my house overnight, and it stays in there, and that's the brine. And this is a mix of marinades, it's a mix of salts, and all this kind of stuff. You want to make it pretty salty. That way the idea with the brine is you actually get it salty enough that it sucks all of the moisture out of the bird. Makes the bird all kinds of dry, but because it's staying in there for about 8 hours or so, because you're doing this overnight, it actually has time to pull all of the juices back into the bird. And the great part is once it pulls all those juices back into the bird, it drags along all of the flavors with it. And those flavors land in the meat, and it makes for a crazy tasty bird. This is why you brine. The other reason why you brine It's because that pumps it full of moisture, which gives you a little bit of flexibility to overcook it. So that way you can be negligent and lazy. Because remember, we're trying to make this easy. So the brining not only gives you flavor, but it gives you the buffer to be negligent. So make sure you brine it. Then place your thawed chicken in there. It's not a frozen chicken. Place your thawed chicken in there. Let it sit in there for 8 to 16 hours or so. You don't need to do more than that. Turn it once if you can. No bigs. Once you're done, get yourself a beer butt chicken cooker. You can use a beer can if you want. I actually have a link in the show notes. This is a cast iron. It's like a rotisserie. It's a, what do they call it? They have like a really like pretentious name for what it does, but essentially you shove this cone up the chicken's butt, and the chicken sits in this thing, and you can fill this thing with onions and carrots and vegetables, and and in the middle of the cone you fill with fluid like. I use garlic oil sometimes. You could put applesauce in there. You could put onions in there itself. You could put apples in there. You could do that as well. This thing right here steams the bird the entire time it's cooking. Again, this is giving it moisture. So, and I have a link to it in the show notes. This cooker thing here is called the Pre-Seasoned Cast Iron Vertical Poultry Roaster Cookware. Beer butt chicken holder is what I called it, but. You could actually just use a pop can if you wanted to. So you get that bird on that thing, and then rub it down, make it dry. Put it on this beer butt chicken stand, and then go toss like some salt, some seasoning on this, and then wrap it up with foil. And then go start your barbecue up. I've got links to my recommended ways to start your barbecue, including a chimney starter. That way you're not using any lighter fluid, so it tastes delicious. Then spread your coals out on your barbecue to get it nice and even heated. And then put the bird down. Now, I in my picture here, because I was taking pictures, put foil on the bird when it was already on the barbecue. Don't do that. Put foil on the bird. Cover it really good. Give it a foil dome, because the steam is your friend, and you're trying to trap the steam in there. So you put that on the barbecue just like that. Don't do it like I did, where you put the foil on once it's on the barbecue. That's a bad idea because it gets hot. And trying to put foil on something that's sitting on top of fire hurts. Get your barbecue up around 400 degrees. You could probably do this in the oven too if you didn't have a barbecue. And just cook it until there's clear juices that come out of the bird and it smells cooked. If you have a probe and you want to stick a thermometer in there, you're shooting for about 165, 175 degrees. You'll be able to just pull a leg right off. Yesterday, I put my bird in there for about 3 hours. It was about 2 hours, 45 minutes. So I just set it in there and walked away and prepped unfiltered for about 3 hours. Don't do this. I even left while it was cooking, but don't do that. But I left. I took off. I went and ran some errands. I came back because I know what's great about it is while I'm going about my day, while I'm being productive, I know when I'm going to get home, there's delicious, delicious food just waiting for me, ready to go. So here's what I did for this particular bird is I was going cheap and quick. I grabbed some applesauce, and I put applesauce in the middle cone, and then I put some brown sugar and applesauce in the bottom of the pan, and then I put a sweet barbecue rub on the skin of the bird. Cooked that all up. You get a nice little apple flavoring to it. It's really, really nummy. It smells so good while it's cooking. There's a shot of it you can see the apples start to caramelize as it cooks there. And now when it's cooking, I have foil over this entire bird, so it's steaming with that applesauce the entire time. That applesauce just steams the meat and makes it so tasty. And then about the last 15 minutes or so, I pull the foil off, so that way the bird can kind of get the skin all cooked up real nice. And then you pull it out, and it will fall apart at this point because it's been cooked with steam pretty much the entire time. Steam, and then you finish it with some nice charcoal flavoring. So I put mine in a little tin pan. I have links to those in the show notes as well. And then I wrapped it up with foil, and I let it sit for about 20 minutes in the oven while that was, or on the stovetop, just wrapped in foil, just let it rest, let it kind of coast out. And while that was just coasting out, I whipped up some rice. And then I had rice and chicken. And that's it right there. So it sounds like a lot of steps, but if you think about it, you just brine the bird, you put it on the barbecue for about 3 hours, you wrap it in foil, maybe 2 hours, it depends on the size of your bird, and you go about your day, and you get, it's like crock pot, only barbecue. And it is so delicious, it is so moist, and it makes delicious wraps. It's great chicken for salad, it's great chicken to just have in there when you just want to grab a piece of white meat. It goes great with rice, you throw a little teriyaki on there. It makes it's the kind of chicken, too, where you can pull it apart. So if you want like a pulled chicken sandwich, and then you just take this, you mix a little barbecue sauce in there, and you put it on a hoagie roll, you're good to go. It's that delicious. So there you go. That's Chris's easy barbecue chicken. I got all of the steps in the show notes. So So you can go try it out this weekend if you'd like. I've got the hardware that you're able to buy online linked in the show notes if you're missing anything. You could probably try this in the oven too. If you give it a go, take a picture and email it into today@jupiterbroadcasting.com. I want to see how that goes. It's so good. Now I've got chicken in the fridge for days. And Chase came over last night for Unfilter, and I was able to feed him. So I ate and he ate, and I'm going to be eating lunch off that thing. So for a little bit of prep time, you can then just set it and forget it, and then you've got essentially 2 or 3 days worth of delicious, high-protein, healthy food. There you go. That's the little bit of the barbecue challenge. If you'd like to support the Jupiter Broadcasting Network and the Tech Talk Today show, go over to patreon.com/today and become a pledge member. Your monthly contribution helps fund, and we invest that in the Jupiter Broadcasting Network. You become one of our funders, and that's how we're able to keep things going, expand, hire contractors, work on future projects, and things like that. Mumble Room, any closing thoughts, any chicken questions before we go? No? Okay. Everybody's quiet about the chicken topic. I won't do it too often, but I want to impart with you something you can use over the weekend, and that's how to make a delicious piece of chicken. Delicious! You could probably do it in the oven, but just if you do it in the oven, don't tell me. Tell me you did it on a barbecue with charcoal. Unless it turns out amazing, then I want to know how you did it in the oven. All right, we're going to go. Thank you very much for tuning in this week. Tech Talk Today is live Monday through Thursday over at jblive.tv, jblive.info for the audio. We start at 9 a.m. Pacific, noon Eastern. techtalktoday.reddit.com is where you go if you want to contribute something to the show like Newswise or commentary or just vote things up or down, techtalktoday.reddit.com. jupiterbroadcasting.com/contact is where you can find the contact form to send your thoughts into the show and join us live to participate in the Mumble Room so you can comment on the stories as we go. Now, the Mumble Room did pick our ending clip today, and I have to warn you, if you have a clown thing, you may want to look away from the screen because this has got to be the creepiest cereal commercial I've ever seen.
Breakfast! I'm hungry! Take it from Carinkles. That's me. The best breakfast under the big top is post-sugar rice Carinkles. So crinkly, so delicious, so different. Each grain of rice in sugar rice Carinkles is carinkled with honey and sugar. It's so good, I crinkle every time I eat it. Yep, no matter what other rice cereal you've ever tried, you'll love post-sugar rice Carinkles best of all. Honey and sugar make it different and wonderful. A circus of fun to eat. So you crinkle on down to the store for post-sugar rice Carinkles, the greatest cereal treat on earth.